let's start in the top left corner because for some reason that always seems like the best place to start. And we'll go from there. In this region, Alabama, the number 1 seed, been right there all season. It became pretty clear pretty quickly that was one of the best teams in the sport this year, and they did not waver down the stretch. A number 1 seed for Nate Oates' Alabama squad. The number 2 seed in this region is Arizona, and we'll kind of go from there. So before we hop into Sweet 16 and going from there, general thoughts from the South region?
Yeah, not stunned. Alabama was number 1 overall. We'll get to the part of that I have a bigger issue with, but it doesn't pertain to the South region. So you've got a couple, I guess from an 8-9 standpoint, I just don't want that West Virginia team. That's I feel like that's every 8-9 every year. I talk myself into that though of, I want no part of that team. And then, sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. But you're going to get a challenge from Maryland to West Virginia. And then you've got some intriguing mid-majors here. Obviously, Utah State's had a really good season. Most people thought they were a little bit closer to the bubble, but they get the 10. Mm-hmm. And then everybody's new favorite mid-major darling, the Fighting Pat Kelseys,
yep,
who take care of business, win their conference tournament, get a pretty favorable matchup with San Diego State in that 5-12. That's a dangerous 12 seed. They can really score. That's a really good basketball team. And then also Furman, Ben Vanderplas hurt for Virginia. They get to the ACC tournament title game. But those two, I would not be stunned if we see a 12 or 13 seed out of this region making the Sweet 16. And then the other thing I'll just point out is you do have 2 high major conference tournament champions here in Alabama and Arizona. So you got 2 teams playing good basketball as your 1 and 2 seeds.
Yeah. I think looking around the 8-9 matchups, these are both. I think Maryland and West Virginia are 2 teams with not the highest of ceilings, right? If you look over in the Midwest, you have an Iowa team that like that's a dangerous matchup for a team like Houston that just isn't built on scoring the basketball. Marcus Sasser not 100% with a groin injury he suffered in the AAC tournament. I haven't looked in the last 12 hours or so about what the updates are on that, but he was at least questionable going into the title game as a result. But Iowa is one of those teams that on the right day, they can beat anybody in the country, including Houston, and Maryland and West Virginia are dangerous for different reasons.
Yes.
Right. I don't think there's a game in which, I don't see a world in which Alabama is down to either of those teams by 12 with 5 minutes left. They might be down 2.
Yep.
But there's a world in which Iowa is beating Houston by 12 at the under 4. And I'm not sure that's the case with those other 2 teams, but on the opposite side of the equation, Houston could beat Iowa 56-37 if Iowa's not making any shots.
Right.
And Maryland and West Virginia, I feel like their floors are pretty high.
Yes,
right.
This is the high floor, low ceiling version of the 8-9 matchup. Yes.
Right. And I think anybody in the Big 12 would tell you that you do not want to play West Virginia. I mean, that's a team deep in the standings of the Big 12, but a team that is top 20 at KenPom. And that Maryland team has high quality coaching and some players that have been around for a long time. So that kind of jumped off there. I think if you're an Alabama fan, you're not too terribly. I mean, especially when the other 8-9 matchups are Memphis and FAU, and I don't think anybody wants any part of Memphis. I don't think they're gonna. I wouldn't bet on them to make a deep run, and I'm not sure they have anybody that can deal with Zach Edey in any type of way. If they, assuming that they beat Florida Atlantic, which is not a foregone conclusion. But then Kansas, the 9-8 down in the West is Arkansas or Illinois, and that's not. I mean, that's you getting a lottery pick in the second round. That's tough to have to go up against Nick Smith. That's at least something that's going to make you think. And if not, it's Terrence Shannon Jr. and Matthew Mayer. So we'll see what goes on there. But the 8-9 seed there, you mentioned Charleston and Furman. That's a cool duo of 12 and 13. Creighton and NC State, I think, is an incredibly the 6-11 matchups in the first round are really, really good. We have a Kentucky Providence in the first round.
Bryce Hopkins game.
We have a TCU Bobby Hurley possibility in a 6-11. But that's an interesting one for sure. And then the other things I'm aggressively neutral on, and we'll watch the games because they are in the NCAA tournament. But for reasons beyond that, there's not a ton. Anything else before we make a pick?
Let's jump in.
Or 3 picks, I suppose. Okay, so on the top half of the bracket, so this is the group that would have an Alabama, the 8-9 matchup. San Diego State versus Charleston is the 5-12 on the top half of the South region. Virginia and Furman the 4-13. Who makes it to the Sweet 16?
I'm going chalk. I've got Alabama, Virginia. Now I do have Charleston beating San Diego State.
I did go that way as well.
But ultimately, I think this is going to be. I really want to see this Charleston Virginia game, just to see what happens. Because I reached the conclusion that Charleston just hasn't seen something like this defense, even if it's not quite as good as in years past. And you just can't get yourself prepared for it in time. And Virginia's just going to win 60-57 because Charleston's going to have a bad shooting day because they're playing Virginia's defense.
Sure.
Even though Virginia's ceiling is not all that high at this point, I would feel better about Charleston's chances of going to the Sweet 16 if Virginia wasn't the team standing in their way. And then Alabama, I just don't have enough faith in either of those teams. So that's what I have in the top half of the bracket.
I think you're right. I think Virginia is high on the list of mid-majors have a hard time preparing for themselves for that. Like at the top of the list this year is Zach Edey.
Sure.
Like if you happen to get Zach Edey in the second round, like if Florida Atlantic gets Zach Edey in the second round, they have no idea what's about to happen. I mean, like you have high major coaches talking about how they had no idea what was.
The Big Ten has no idea what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So how in the world is Penny Hardaway or Florida Atlantic gonna know what to do? I think Virginia is just a mainstay near the top of that list. Not an elite defense this year, but still just a high major team that is really, really difficult to adjust to when you have one chance to play them in a 40-minute game and then you lose if you go home. You go home if you lose. That's a tough place to be in. So I am chalk at the top as well. I don't like number one overall seed. They walked through the SEC tournament. Like didn't sweat for a single second in the SEC tournament, and they're rolling. I'm very anti. They're rolling through the tournament, so they're going to roll through the conference tournament, so they're going to roll through the NCAA tournament. I'm very anti that, but it is the number one overall seed, and like I said, I don't think. Like I'll just have faith in their big shot makers and Brandon Miller to make buckets down the stretch if they get a close game against a tough team. But I don't see a world in which they're down, a dozen or 10 points late in that game. And if they're just, the most likely thing is that they're up by 12 to 15. But if it is close, I think they'll have the guys to get it done in a close game in the second round. So I am chalk there as well. Bottom half of the bracket. I guess we can go ahead and Alabama, Virginia. Did you say who wins that game?
I did not. I have the Crimson Tide.
Okay. As do I. All right. Bottom half of the bracket. The 6-11 here is NC State. Baylor, the 3 seed, taking on UC Santa Barbara. The Missouri and Utah State is one of those. I think that's one of those matchups that will not jump off of any casual fans page, but those following the sport closely are looking forward to that one.
That's going to be a really high energy, high scoring, fun to watch game. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Arizona gets Princeton, who beat Yale in the Ivy League championship game. That was not something that was supposed to happen. Yale, a top 80 KenPom team, I think. And like I said before we went on, Princeton 112. So that one, a little bit of a surprise, but Princeton representing the Ivy League in this year's NCAA tournament. who makes their way to the Sweet 16.
I've got Creighton and Arizona.
Okay. All right.
I'm sticking with the Blue Jays. I've been on this all season. I like these matchups, actually, from a Baylor standpoint. If you can just disrupt those guards a little bit, and also for a Creighton team that sometimes struggles to score, I've just been scarred by what I've seen from Baylor defensively. I have a huge mental hurdle believing that that's going to change against high-level opposition here.
Yep.
And then, Creighton, Big East tournament didn't go great, but other than that, they've been playing much better. And then, okay, you get your rematch with Arizona. They basically played to a tie the first time. It's difficult to beat a team twice. I know Arizona's playing very well. They're obviously a really good team. Just the existence of Ryan Kalkbrenner makes me feel better about that matchup. They've seen the Twin Towers before, so that's not going to be something new to them. And ultimately, I just am going to continue to stick with this team until they're actually eliminated from the NCAA tournament.
I've got Creighton coming out of the top half of this bracket as well.
Oh, okay.
If it would, because it's Baylor, I don't have any faith in Baylor. I don't think. Now, granted, now they're making us look silly, and those three guards will have 69 combined, and they'll win the game.
And they'll be in the Elite Eight, yeah.
Right. But I just don't like Creighton's offense is good enough to withstand like a good game from those guards, I think, and I just don't think that defense is going to let those three guards have what would be defined as a good game.
Yep.
I think it's far more likely that we look up and their guards kind of are in like we went 13 of 31 from the field combined kind of thing, and they'll score plenty of points and they'll get to the free throw line, but like that efficiency won't be good enough. That's kind of where I'm coming from in that Creighton Baylor matchup. I wanted to pick Missouri in the Arizona-Missouri game. I wanted to, but Missouri is just not good enough defensively for me to look myself in the mirror and actually pick them to win. It would be fun. I think that's another game that's going to be incredibly high scoring. Those are two top 10 offenses at KenPom, but Arizona's defense isn't great either, but it's definitely the better of the two. And I think Arizona is also just the better basketball team, but high tempo Arizona team, two great offenses. And it would be really fun if the final score of that game was like 90-86. But I think ultimately Tommy Lloyd's team gets it done. And then I'll just keep on rolling. So I also have Creighton and Arizona there. I am with a team that is so dependent on the efficiency of their interior guys in Arizona. Now, I say that for a team that's top 15 in the three-point shooting in the country. I understand that, but I think we would all agree that the foundation and the nucleus of that offense is Umar Ballo and Azuolas Tubelis in the interior. And when you have Ryan Kalkbrenner, I feel pretty good about that. And that combination with Creighton's guards and the fact that I think Baylor Shireman's going to have a moment in this tournament at some point, and all of those things, I'll pick the Blue Jays to make it to the Elite Eight.
We got the same Elite Eight then.
Gosh, this is so boring. Alabama, Creighton, who you got?
Alabama. Alabama has a big guy for Kalkbrenner. I don't like this one for Creighton at all. Those guards are going to get smothered by all of Alabama's length. To me, this is the game where Creighton scores 52 points and loses, 70-52.
And to me, this is the game that I have to pick at some point for Alabama to not shoot the ball well, and this is going to be the game.
Wow.
And if they don't shoot the ball well here, then if they don't shoot the ball combined with the way that Creighton plays defense, then they might really have a stinker here. There have been games throughout the season that I thought, Alabama, no way that they lose that one, right? No way that they do that, right? Oklahoma 76th ranked offense, 45th ranked defense, and they beat this Crimson Tide team by 25. And Creighton is far better than that. So this is where my thing all year with being nervous about Alabama's shooting. This is where it comes to fruition. I'm so mad. Everybody in this bracket should be mad that Creighton is the 6th seed in this bracket, by the way. I didn't say that at the beginning, but everybody in this bracket should be mad about that. But, right, top 15 defense, top 30 offense, and like I said, I've been on it all year that at some point, like, can Alabama win the game that they shoot poorly in this tournament? Like, that's going to be the question, because it might only be one that they need to get through. And if it's Creighton, I don't think they get through it. So I'm doing a little bit of predicting that it'll happen at the right time against the right team against Creighton, because anybody else in this bracket, like if it happens in the 8-9 game, I still think they can win that game.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think Creighton is good enough that if it happens against Creighton, that it'll be a real issue. So I did not think that on March 13th, after your season and your love affair with Creighton, that I'd be the one picking Creighton to go to the Final Four, but I can't exactly blame you for picking the Tide. But I think like they're going to stumble at some point, and if they pick against the wrong team, then I think it's going to be an issue. So I've got Creighton in the Final Four.
And that's interesting for this bracket in particular, because your 2 and your 3 seed are both very offensively lopsided.
Mm-hmm.
To that point of whoever's coming, that elite, or yes, the Elite Eight game theoretically is going to be a real challenge for Alabama in that sense, because I think you and I are both very confident it's going to be one of those 3 teams. And all 3 of them, right, if you can't hit your shots against Baylor or Arizona, they're probably just going to score, 75 to 80 points, because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the bigger hurdles Alabama's going to have to get through, because they should be fine to that point. I don't think Virginia can't score enough points. The 8-9 can't score enough points, but the bottom of that bracket has some real offensive firepower.
All right, new game that I'm springing on you this second. You have to pick a seed that's deeper than the 6th seed to win this region. Which one would you pick?
Ooh. Give me Missouri's offense.
Okay. I think that's fair. I'll go with Maryland.
Okay.
12-12 team. There are stretches this year where they looked really, really good, especially earlier in the season. I'll go with Maryland. Good coaching, and they have guys that are offensively gifted enough that I think they have the right 3-week stretch that they could possibly piece something together.